Imagine you are a royal. Your whole family just got killed. Everyone you love is dead. You must run for your life with your one true buddy at your side. This is what happened to a real Prince Abd al-Rahman, and his narrative is crazy. Right, simple summary. In the year 750, the Umayyad Caliphate was large, but they were nasty to non-Arab Muslims. Those non-Arab Muslims then united as the Abbasids and battled the Umayyads. The Umayyads were defeated. The Abbasids stepped in. The Umayyad family was wiped off. Many people lost their lives. The only ones left were Prince Abd al-Rahman and his faithful freed slave Badr. And of course, they were really sad, because literally everybody they knew was dead. The prince and Badr had a definite aim. Head to Al-Andalus, seek help, assemble an army. But how do we do that? There were three alternatives. First, sneak through the Eastern Roman Empire across Europe and into Spain. The problem was the Romans detested everything Arab. Also, they would have to pass through Christian territories, which were no friends to Muslims at all. The trek was around 5,000 kilometers long and would take about 300 days. And that was if they could locate food and not get caught. Second choice, cross the ocean. Simple, isn't it? Just take a boat. But first they would require a ship of ultra strength for extensive ocean excursions. Good luck with that back then when most boats hugged the coast. Then they'd need a crew of 10 to 20 people they could trust not to stab the prince in the back. Then they would have to sneak into ports for food and avoid pirates, but if they could pull it off, the trip would be only 20 days. 300, way faster than that. Third alternative, walk down Africa. That's the longest way, roughly 350 days, but it was the safest one, in a way. That depends on your skill at sweet-talking folks. The Berbers were the inhabitants of North Africa before the Arab conquest. The Romans and Byzantines governed that area, hence they were largely light-skinned people like Europeans, and there were black folks. The Berbers lived in small bands and therefore were easily conquered. But conquering something is not the same as equitably ruling it. Remember that unfair tax system from Part 1? The one that pissed non-Arab Muslims so much that it caused a revolution. Some individuals said it was really fair. Now let's see. Think of a Muslim Arab farmer and a non-Muslim Berber farmer. They each work hard all year and make $100. Now taxes. The Muslim pays zakat, a religious levy of 2.5%, plus further 10% of farm revenues. Total, $12.50. The non-Muslim pays jizya, a tax for not fighting in the army, but even if they'd wanted to, they couldn't have joined. 10%, that is, plus kharaj, a land tax of 20%, sometimes even 50%. We'll stick to 20, total $30. Wait, that's actually more than the Muslims' $12.50. No, it wasn't just. Even if a Berber converted to Islam, he had to continue paying the old taxes plus the new ones. So yeah, terribly unfair. The Berbers were so angry that they initiated their own revolution even before the Abbasids. They lived in small, split groups which made them feeble. But now they had one enemy in common, the greedy Umayyads, so they enrolled. The rebellion began in modern Morocco and stretched up to Tunisia. The Umayyads sent a huge force to defeat them, but they lost. Awkward. The Umayyads lost control of most of North Africa and even parts of Spain. And so back to Abd al-Rahman and option 3. This Berber insurrection was a catastrophe for Africa. The Berbers beat the Umayyads, but thereafter had little reason to stay unified. Instead of creating a huge empire, they began battling one another, so there was a lot of warfare inside Africa. Al-Andalus, meanwhile, was a shambles too. The Christians of the north were taking their revenge. Berbers were revolting in the south, and a wayward governor wants to take it over. Just the time for someone with a true claim to authority to turn up. Reaching Al-Andalus was not simple, but that also meant that the Abbasids couldn't simply get there either. It was a 5-year trip. What was Abd al-Rahman doing all this time? Not 100% clear, but one thing happened. There was also a governor in Tunisia called Abd al-Rahman. Yes, another. He sought his own homeland and did his best to be kind to the Abbasids. They said no. In revenge, he invited all those whom the Abbasids detested, including our prince, to stay in his realm. Our prince went there to rest and to make friends with the Berbers. It is connections that count. Luckily, his mother was Berber, so he was half Berber. He had a right to the throne, he detested the Abbasids, he was adept at talking, he offered key jobs in his future empire. So Berbers would have supported him. But the governor grew afraid. As more people rallied around the prince, the governor worried the prince might do something horrible. So one night the governor instructed his troops to get rid of the prince. Badr was not here this time, but a woman of a chieftain saved them. She stowed them under her own stuff. We don't know for sure, but let's say it was a large pink outfit with horses and glitter. Then the prince and Badr packed everything and went on west to Morocco. At last they arrived after 5 years of starting. The prince was received with affection. Then he did the hard thing. He bid Badr farewell, not all the time, though. While the prince stayed in Morocco looking for backing, Badr was commanded to cross into Al-Andalus and seek support there. The pair broke up with determination and perhaps a few tears. Now see the governor of Al-Andalus. His name, Yusuf al-Fihri. Yes, another similar name. He knew the Umayyad prince would come. Yusuf, unlike his cousin, had a plan. His farm was a disaster, he saw it. People wanted someone who could arrange things. To walk a popular, famous royal about would be sure failure. So he had two choices. Attack and crush the prince before he gathered support, option A, then blame the Abbasids for his death. Good strategy, except that Christians and Berbers were rebelling just as the prince arrived. Option B, ask a daughter to marry. Tell the prince to cease claiming the crown and he can marry a daughter. How did that work out? Not good. More and more Umayyads and Berbers and local authorities came to the prince. The south capitulated and proclaimed him their rightful heir. He refused the offer of marriage graciously. So no matter what, Yusuf had to go with option A. The prince had a force of some 3,000 warriors. The governor came in with nearly 10,000 well-armed men. People of Cordoba watched from the walls. From one side it looked like a bloodbath, but both armies were weary after their long marches. So they pitched their tents close together to sleep and fight in the morning. This time the prince wasn't being ambushed. He was the jumper. In the dead of night, the prince and his forces stormed the governor's camp. Soldiers half sleeping, with no time to put on armor. Fire was everywhere. The prince and Badr knew exactly how it felt to be raided at midnight, and they laid waste to the supply and command posts. Then they ran back to their own camp and slept the rest of the night. The next morning the governor was outraged. He commanded his army to battle, but what he found was his own fatigued, frightened soldiers, not a new army, and the prince's army rested and ready to battle. The tents were not the primary goal that night. It was the morale of the soldiers, and it was utterly broken. The prince launched a charge of his own, cutting down those who stood in his way. The inhabitants of Cordoba could not believe it. The prince was received with open arms. The governor was taken prisoner, but the prince, instead of killing him, offered peace. He wanted to be nice. The governor refused and fled north to assemble a new army, but before he could, the prince's supporters captured him and returned his head. 6 years after losing his caliphate in 756, Abd al-Rahman established a new Umayyad dynasty at Cordoba. At last, he could avenge himself against the Abbasids, or so he hoped. Turns out running a big new country requires a lot of work. Time went by. The prince grew old and died. He never took his retribution, but he did repel many Abbasid attacks. His emirate was a haven for those who fought the Abbasids. Cordoba was one of the richest cities in Middle Ages, but lost to men was the narrative of the fleeing prince as the centuries rolled by. The 11th century saw the kingdom fragment into smaller sections. Christian knights took advantage and forced the Muslims out slowly. The Reconquista was complete by the 15th century. All that is left of Abd al-Rahman is a statue in a seaside city where he initially landed on the peninsula. No one knows what happened to Badr, but we prefer to assume they stayed together, living long lives as prince and king, and most especially as friends. Oh, and the guy who tried to murder the prince? He is, in fact, a patron on Patreon. If you want your own doodle in a video, check to our Patreon. Thanks for watching. Farewell.